Because it's been moribund for about 15 years while I was a young officer in the market. Lagos State has consistently been coming to the market to raise bonds. And we've been using these bonds for specific capital projects. We don't raise bonds to finance recurring revenue or to run government. We don't do that. Because our IGR already is about 65–70% of our entire revenue. So, and our recurrent expenditure is between 35% and 40% of our total budget. So we try to maintain that discipline as a sub-sovereign. So that gives us the flexibility to raise bond on a medium-term basis and be able to have the debt sustainability regime that's made us a darling of the capital market. Now, what we're doing now is to continue to ride the yield curve, because if you notice, in the Nigerian capital market now, the federal government of Nigeria has already established a 20-year yield curve, and it's for sub-sovereigns and corporates to begin to ride on that. We were issuing bonds of 5 years earlier. I think about 3 years ago, we were issuing 7-year bond. But now, for the first time, we are the first sub-sovereign to have issued a 10-year bond. We just concluded that in August. I'm sure the next time we come, we'll try to extend the yield curve further. We might go to 12 years, we might go to 13 years or 15 years, depending on the appetite of investors in the market.
What are you doing differently in Lagos State with all the proceeds that you've generated from the domestic capital market, and how you've been able to utilize them effectively for the development of your infrastructure?
I think it starts from revenue. I think the major responsibility of a government is to see how it can raise revenue on a sustainable basis. And the revenue that is sustainable is the one that is internally generated. That's where Lagos State got it right, and we have been improving on that. Look, every state is blessed. Every state has the potential. There are what I would call structural rigidities within the system that prevents a lot of states to take advantage of their God-given resources. But pending when Nigeria will restructure and put every state in a position to have access to their resources, states can collaborate, because the economy is characterized by comparative advantage and resource endowment and all that. For us in Lagos, we are doing that. We're already collaborating with Kebbi State on agriculture. Now we have opened another window, an economic collaboration between Lagos State and Kano State. The two states being the two mega cities in Nigeria. And the cooperation is such that it is all-encompassing. We are not limiting it to agri like we are doing with Kebbi. It extends to commerce, to IT, to technology, to infrastructure, a lot of cooperation, because we see Kano as a major window for the trans-Saharan trade. And we see Lagos as a major window for the transatlantic states. So when you bring those two together, then you're going to create a kind of synergy that will now attract other states to join in that partnership. So it might start as partnership between two states, but it is not impossible that maybe in the next 10–20 years, we might have about 20 states collaborating and picking different parts of the value chain that we're creating and taking it down as an advantage to their own states. And everything will boil down to the supply side. So that is the philosophy guiding this. You want to increase the supply of everything. Is it foreign exchange? You must increase the supply. Is it infrastructure? So anything you focus on the supply side management as opposed to demand side management, chances are that you will increase supply, and it's only supply that can bring down price, not the ones we set artificially.
So with the experience that you have now garnered in the debt capital market and how you've been able to use those proceeds for the development of infrastructure, power specifically, what solution is there for the kind of challenges that DISCOs and GENCOs face in Nigeria at this time?
This is what I've been working on with the governor for the past 2 years. We now have a roadmap. We have gone to the regulator to get their initial no objection for us to go ahead. And we are now at the State Assembly to pass the law for the Lagos State Embedded Power Program. And this is what the ambition is. The ambition is to generate 3,000 megawatts of power within the next 3 to 5 years using the embedded power window as approved by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. We are doing intervention in 6 main areas. We are guaranteeing the offtake of power based on that 3,000 megawatts. We are helping the distribution companies to upgrade their infrastructure, because if we don't do that, their system cannot carry the incremental power that we are going to pump into it. So that's the second area of intervention. The third area of intervention is, of course, the gas. Because you cannot generate a kilowatt of power without gas. So we are bringing a floating regasification vessel to be moored on the shores of Lagos around the harbor, and that will provide the gas that will power these 3,000 megawatts.
And then how are you going to be raising funding?
We'll come to the market. We see there are so many ways you can generate funding for it, and it also depends on the kind of value proposition that we make to investors. A lot of investors are using their own balance sheet to participate in this program because we are generating, we are guaranteeing offtake. So they know that whatever happens, they will be paid, and there will be liquidity in the market. That takes me to the fourth area of intervention, which is in collection. The DisCos have agreed with us that we can jointly do a special purpose vehicle to collect and put the money in a dedicated account, so that when investors put money in power plants and they generate, on the other side we can collect, such that it will make the guarantee of the Lagos State not to crystallize. Then the other area we are helping them is in metering. Everywhere we deploy the embedded power, we will have 100% metering of consumers there. And we are supporting the DisCos on that. Then the final one is in the enforcement. We must be able to enforce. As I speak to you, we already have our bill in the State Assembly. It has passed the first reading. I'm sure by next month we have it signed to law by the governor. That bill prescribes stiff punishment for people who are going to bypass meters, who are going to slow down meters, who are going to vandalize electricity assets and all that, so that they can be taken to jail. Because if you don't do that, there will be too much leakage along the value chain, and that makes the sector to be unsustainable.
Wale Oluo, the Commissioner in charge of Energy and Natural Resources at the Lagos State Government. But the flip side of that, in terms of funding electricity and energy with infrastructure, is what exactly do dealers and traders of these papers, whether national or subnational, are looking for in terms of transparency and disclosure? Temple Ashaji also had a very brief chat with Sonia Ayere, who is the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer at Don Lauren Merrifield.
30% of funding, is in the debt capital market, of which 90% of that is FGN. What do you think is the reason for that? It's simple. It's the high yield. And it's risk-free. Now, it doesn't help that most of that money goes to fund, recurrent expenditure, so to speak. But let's just reverse it. Let's assume that interest rates here, right, were somewhere around 5%. And government bonds were, say, 5.5 to, say, 6.5% sustainably. Do you think that kind of return is enough for pension funds? Do you think that banks would want to sustainably have such returns on their books? Or would be looking for what? More yield? It is the search and the hunt for yield, which is just a rational investor behavior that actually begins to drive investment opportunities. Now, listening to my colleague Dave, who says, well, I want you guys to go and come up with products. You can come up with products all you want. The truth of the matter is, and I've heard this many times, is there any way it can be guaranteed by the government? Is there any way it can be, etc.? Now, the thing is, and it's because of that mentality that I just don't want any risk. So to my mind, I think that one of the things that really needs to be done in this market, and I just mentioned that earlier, is that if the general, if the general perception or the thrust forward is we want to diversify our economy. We want to have other ways of earning, say, foreign exchange, etc., etc. Right? You've got to invest to reap. Right? Now, in investing, it means there's a cost. If that cost is too high, right, then the money won't flow there. That's the issue. So, if I'm saying now I want to create a fund, agriculture, etc., there's a bit of risk, but this is the yield I will get. You will get as an investor. An investor is, well, my comparables is also giving the same big yield with no risk. I mean, do you need to be a rocket scientist? You know? So those are some of the issues that need to be addressed to get this market right.
Quite a number of panelists at this conference have been talking about transparency and disclosure, as well as how to reposition the capital market for growth. But how can we improve on all of this?
Well, I totally agree with her. You know, the truth of the matter is, when something is not clear, right, you price it more expensive. When as it becomes clearer and you understand it more, you know, your risk premium that you attach to it begins to fade away. So when you, for instance, when you come up with a new product, like she was saying, it is 9 out of 10 times the market, even when they like it, still want to say, you know what, I don't understand it, so I'm going to price it a bit expensive because there's risk which I still don't get.